Hello! Every time we talk about building complex security systems, we will inevitably touch upon the issues of Sigur's interaction with other systems. The necessity of such interaction in reality depends on a multitude of factors, the tasks that are intended to be solved through the construction of such integrations, the scale of the object itself, and the cost-effectiveness of the chosen solution. Thus, in cases where the object is small and a full-fledged video surveillance system is not desired, Sigur has the capability to save photos or a series of frames directly connected to the system IP camera server. This allows accompanying the ongoing event in the system with additional data, which can be useful for both analytics and resolving a number of disputed situations. By the way, we discussed this in a separate video. We implemented a similar approach regarding security alarm systems. For example, the Sigur E2 and E4 controllers have security functions. This allows for the direct connection of various sensors to devices, thereby deploying a security system using only system resources. Of course, when more features needed, Sigur offers many ready-made integrations with popular video surveillance systems and fire alarm systems. Let's talk about what a security zone is. Generally, it is a room equipped with various sensors for operational monitoring of its condition. Several sensors connected in a single line form a security loop. Today, there are many types of sensors. Depending on the operating conditions, they can be designed for indoor or outdoor placement, and by the type of tasks they perform, they are divided into volumetric, infrared, ultrasonic, acoustic, and many others. However, as a rule, they are all united by two types of information transmission: addressable and non-addressable, also known as analog. Addressable sensors allow you to understand which specific sensor installed in the room has been triggered. For example, in large warehouse spaces where the number of sensors can be counted in dozens, an addressable device allows for a higher level of information and data reliability. Analog sensors do not have the capability to specifically report the activation of a particular sensor. They only trigger alarm signals throughout the entire circuit. It is reasonable to use such devices in small spaces, for example, in office rooms, where the installation of one sensor completely addresses the security issue. In particular, Sigur controllers only work with analog sensors. This should be taken into account when designing the system and selecting equipment. Let's talk about how the controller processes signals from the security loop. In a normal state, the connected circuit has a certain constant resistance, from 3.3 to 6.2 k-ohms. When at least one of the sensors is triggered, this resistance changes, and the controller sends an alarm signal to the system server. The alarm signal will continue to be sent until the system operator removes the circuit from protection in the Sigur software client interface. Thus, setting up a security system based on Sigur controllers occurs in several stages. The first is connecting the security loop with one or more alarm sensors to the controller. The second is configuring the controller to work with the security loop. The third step is creating and configuring the display of security zones in the Sigur software interface. Let's start with connecting the loop. As an example, I have already prepared a motion alarm sensor. The sensor itself must first be connected to the power supply using the plus and minus terminals on its board. Next, it is necessary to connect the output of the alarm sensor, which will signal an alarm, to the controller. Connect the NC and COM terminals of the sensor to the terminals of the alarm sensor's controller, +1 and -1. To process signals correctly, the security loop needs constant resistance. Hence, a resistor is added to the COM wire. Device connection to the controller is complete. Now, configure the controller to process security loop signals. To do this, we will open Client Program on Equipment tab and select access point we need on controller, then Access Settings. First, let's configure security loop parameter. It allows linking security loop connected to controller with access points. The loop is connected to +1 and -1 terminals of controller, so we select loop 1. When selecting the loop, the following settings become available. Delay in arming the security. This is the time during which the system ignores brief activations of sensors in the zone after the loop is armed. This can be useful in cases where a security employee arms a zone and needs to exit the room quickly after activating the function. Here, you can also activate the checkbox Disarm on granting access. In other words, this function allows the zone to be automatically disarmed when a sanctioned entry is made into the premises. The Arm Security by Card Hold function allows the zone to be armed based on the fact that the card is held by the reader. After setting all the necessary configurations, we save the changes by pressing the OK button. Now let's move on to making security zones in the software interface. Security tab is used for managing and monitoring the setup of security zones. Here, it is possible to add and remove zones or groups of zones, create a custom hierarchical list, as well as monitor the current status of the zones and manage them. To add a new security zone or group of zones, we will click the Add Zone button. The Delete button is intended for removal, while the Import Zone Configuration button opens the selection of which system to import already created zones from, Orion or Rubesh, and is designed to work with these integrations. The Refresh button is used to update the list of security zones in case it has been changed by other system operators. After creating a new security zone, options for editing it become available. The group parameter allows you to change the group to which the zone belongs. For example, several security zones can belong to a specific object, and they can be combined into groups for convenience. Let's assign a name, for example, Office. The number is a parameter for easy search of the security zone in the list using the search bar on the screen. The type parameter allows you to select the system that provides zone status info. This is our controller, so we select Sigur. Next, choose which access point is in the security zone. We set to the Office access point. The mode allows you to set the type of zone, security or technological, including fire safety. Here, it is security. The status contains information about the state of the zone, armed, disarmed, alarm, or unknown in case of a communication failure. Here, you can assign a camera from any video systems to the security zone. As a result, it will be possible to view live video from a specific camera when an event in the security zone is registered. At this point, the setup of the security zone is complete. To save the parameters, we will click the Apply button. Now, let's discuss how to work with security zones in the Sigur software depending on the specific user's task. For example, for employees who are exclusively involved in the commissioning of the system, the Security tab will be sufficient for the initial setup of zones and their further modernization. In the case of security personnel working directly in the system interface, it is possible to display the created security zones on the floor plan of the facility, or display it directly on the Monitoring tab for operational oversight of the situation at the site. We discussed the construction of floor plans and the setup of the user view in Sigur in separate videos. Now we will demonstrate the operation of the configured functionality. We will set the zone to security in the software interface and simulate a situation where the motion sensor connected to the controller has been triggered. The sensor indicates the detection of motion and sends the corresponding signal to the controller. The controller, in turn, recorded the alarm of the security zone and sent the corresponding event to the service, which we can see on the Real-Time Monitoring tab. If necessary, various responses can be configured for this event, such as notifying security via SMS or any other messenger. We explain how to configure the response to critical events and send notifications in separate videos. With this, the setup of the controller's functionality for working with the security loop is complete. Goodbye.